Guys, it's an absolute pleasure to sit with you today and talk to you about the band and the potential future of what you guys have going on, which we'll chat about in a minute. But obviously, with the record coming out soon, obviously, You Feel It Too is coming out in a few days for people. How do you look back on the inside now? Because I know that there was some band member changes, sonic changes as well. There's a lot more electronics on this new record and kind of a lot more instrumentation from what I can hear as a listener. So how do you look back at that period of the band? I know it's only a few years ago, but where are you at now and kind of how have you changed as musicians really?
Hmm.
Cool question. I think that the first album was us sort of still finding ourselves sonically.
Yeah.
Um, and even to an extent, like our our overall chemistry as a band, because Peter and Emma had just joined the band around the making of that album as
Yeah.
permanent members before they had been filling in for the previous bandmates. And then with a couple of lineup changes, they ended up becoming permanent bandmates. So we were kind of figuring out like not only how we wanted to sound, but also how we worked together. And it was under the strangest circumstances, the lockdown during
Yeah.
the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So um, we look back on that album with uh, fondness. It's like our first album, but I think that we've grown so much, and this album really feels more like us.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Peter, any points on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge fan of the band before I joined, and I was a big fan of all the demos. And as is usually the case when a band is starting, the demos can have different styles sometimes from song to song. And what I always liked about the band is that even if there were songs that sounded very disparate from each other, it all sounded like the same band, and it gave like a really wide palette of sonic textures that could be offered, in a show. And when it came time to like make that record and pick songs for it, it was pretty similar to the making of the new record where we had songs that we'd been working on for a while and then ones that were written kind of, more like closer to the release date. And so yeah, on the inside, definitely like it reflects like a very specific time and place for us as far as it like the songs themselves and like um but not necessarily the sounds that we were going for. I think that it kind of it's like You Feel It Too is a logical extension of it because we haven't really changed as far as our tastes and as far as the
Mm.
directions that we want to go in. I think that our ambition to have a very wide sound and a very wide range of things that we could do,
Yeah.
um, it was as present on the inside as it was on You Feel It Too. And I think that just the sound of the new record is a little bit more focused, and but it's also us taking chances, and we plan on taking even more chances sonically. Like this is definitely just the first step, and we love these songs, but we have a vision for the overall sound that if on the inside was like a great opening statement, You Feel It Too is us expanding outward in several directions, and we plan on continuing that.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of the sonic reinvention that the Pumpkins went through, from the early stuff to say Machina, where you've got these beautiful lush textures, but then this quite literal machine element, these sort of
Mhm.
electronic elements. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of
Mhm.
that. I wanted to sort of touch on what Carli was saying earlier about, this album feels more us. So when you're talking about us, Carli, and obviously Peter feed into here as well, what is the us? What is the Palomino Blonde us? How would you define your not I'm not asking you to define the sound because that is a challenging question. But when you talk about us and sort of feeling more us, what is that? What does that mean to you, if that makes sense?
Well, I think that um, we're really close as friends
Hmm.
and family. Literally, me and the drummer are cousins,
Hmm.
and we've gone through, a lot together. We've uh, gone on our first like major tour with this lineup, which we hadn't really done with the other bandmates. Uh, we've seen each other through like good and bad, and it continued to do so. Uh, we, uh, I don't know, we've been working really hard, and I think that we we sometimes tend to like get in our heads about it all.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we have this confidence in the music, and like despite any insecurities or whatever that people can feel towards their own music and their own art,
Mm.
like deep down we feel like really proud of it. And I find myself like listening to the songs in the car sometimes, like not just to give mix notes to our engineer or to just approve a master, but just because I genuinely like the songs. And I think we all are coming from a place where we're writing the songs that we wanted to hear when we were growing up. Like I'm writing the stuff that in high school, like I I had always wanted to hear. I always wanted to be in a band that sounded like this. I was in a couple different bands growing up. I played in like a punk rock band. I played in like a softer indie rock band. Um, and then like this kind of sound was something that was always in my heart, but I couldn't really find it out. I couldn't really like whittle down what I was doing
Yeah.
musically until I got to this point.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you've really refined what you're trying to do, but there's almost this again. It's like a sonic journey you guys are on, right? Constantly developing. That sounds like it. Don't know if you have anything to add to that, Peter, as well, from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like what it means to sound like us,
Mm.
obviously, previous members are going to have had their influence on like the songwriting and just the sound of the band. And and as the lineups change and as the dynamics in the band change, I think that the three of us together, we all write songs together. We all write full parts. I write drum parts and stuff as well as guitar and bass, and so does everybody. So we can all at any point, point across the room at each other and say, "Hey, can you try doing this differently, or can you play something else?" Everybody feels comfortable with giving each other suggestions, and when we really believe in something and are willing to put our foot down, we have each other's trust. But we've definitely, gone back and forth, not necessarily arguing from a place of, negativity, but just like passionately trying to do the best for the song. And not to say that that wasn't the case in the early iterations of the band, but what's as clear as ever is that everybody's on the same page, and we're constantly showing each other new music. We're constantly just getting excited about new things and sharing that excitement with each other. And sometimes we inspire each other with our tastes, and sometimes we have things that are more insular. But none of us feel afraid to speak up about what we think would be best for the song. And we all have just this like love and respect and chemistry that flows from that. Everything that we write is kind of, we know that if we impress each other and if we get excited internally, like that the song is gonna, feel good to play live. And whether the audience responds positively to it is almost like it it's not to say that it doesn't matter, but we're propelled forward by, I think, the things that make our bandmates happy and excited to play the songs.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, whether the influences are, like the more electronic stuff that Carli and Emmy are into, or I grew up playing in a lot of hardcore and punk bands myself, and that heavier element is definitely something that I'm drawn to, and I really like a lot of like noise rock, and so all of us do, but it's just we all lean into our own little pockets of fandom, and the cross section of that is what we deliver as Palomino Blond.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many lush kind of textures, to the sound. And I also wanted to touch on the lyrical inspirations, because one of the things, again, the first, when I think I first heard Machine, and I was like, this is amazing, like it sonically, but also lyrically, and when I was listening to the new stuff, there was so many tracks that, if I had time, I'd do like a track by track with you, but there's a couple of tracks on the new record, Automatic, and then It Kills Me as well, that I wanted to touch upon. Lyrically, on this record, it sounds like, even though the melodies are very, very hopeful and very, very uplifting, I think in some ways I get uplifted by melodies and good riffs and great drums personally. But,
Same.
yeah, lyrically, though, perhaps some difficult themes. I wonder, in terms of the writing and the inspiration, if you guys feel comfortable talking about that, what are some of the lyrical inspirations? Because again, beautifully delivered, great, again, wonderful vocal, backed with these really lush, vibrant sounds. But, in terms of the inspirations and the ideas that fuel this record, and again, we can maybe talk about those couple of tracks in a minute, but what are some of the great themes and things that you guys found yourselves talking about and kind of feeding into in the album?
Yeah. So I wrote a lot of songs with this like visual inspiration from like machinery and technology. Some of that you hear on the first album too, with the song Ultraviolet, which is a song I kind of wrote inspired by how you can just click yes on a long list of terms and conditions and sign your likeness away to AI, etc. And on this album, Machine and Automatic kind of lean into that like machinery and technological aesthetic, but through this lens of how we actually connect as human beings, and through a lens of love or heartbreak mostly. Or isolation, all the different like feelings that you can attribute to like human connection or lack thereof. And some of the songs are definitely more hopeful, like it's not all so doom and gloom, but it's an album that's way more focused on human connection and the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. I would say Machine is a little bit looser with like direct meaning, but it is about like climate change and feeling isolated despite how we have supercomputers in our pockets at all times that can connect us to the rest of the world. Automatic is like a song that I wrote when I was feeling really torn up about a relationship, and it's kind of pathetic in a way, like how those lyrics are so in your face. I didn't really like think about changing them after I had first written them. Usually the first draft of lyrics are still like a work in progress, but those I just really rolled with the first thing that came out. Peter had that guitar line, and I just wrote the verse vocal that syncs up on top of it with the lyrics and all, about just losing the chance to be with somebody. And despite that, kind of just being in denial. And at the end of the song, when it says, if this is too much, you can turn it off right now, I kind of imagine if somebody or someone were to be listening to it and to just be overwhelmed to be hearing how I felt and how raw and honest the lyrics were. Like, they could just turn it off.
Yeah.
And Left is another one that is like about love and having a hard time in a relationship. Those lyrics are pretty in your face. It Kills Me was written by our drummer, and I wish that she was here to give commentary, but she has told me that a lot of the lyrical inspiration for that song came from being on a bad acid trip in New York City.
Right.
And she was in Times Square, and there was a really violent altercation happening between these two strangers.
That's Last Forever.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Last Forever. Last
Forever was also written by Emmy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was about this like really bad acid trip in New York and witnessing this like violent altercation between two people. And yeah, then she also wrote It Kills Me, which is about love and unrequited love.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So and obviously, Peter, I want your perspective on this as well. But just to tack onto that, would it be right then if I've interpreted your answer, Carli, as like, and obviously you can't speak for Emmy, but like, is it catharsis? I guess that's kind of overused in terms of the songwriting. But for you personally, do you write songs to don't know if I'm oversimplifying it, make yourself feel better, deal with the situation? Because it sounds like maybe the heartbreak, you're commentating on your thoughts around that. Did it make you feel better? And I guess does songwriting in general, and Peter obviously feed into this, is it catharsis for you? Does it make you feel better to get this stuff out? Not even put it on a record, but just write this stuff down, get it out into a song.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Because releasing the record is like the hard part, but writing the songs is the easy part. And a lot of stuff you say through lyrics that you wouldn't say otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't written too many lyrics for the band just yet, but I used to a lot, and for previous projects, and just in general, like, when I'm playing guitar, I try to find, I try to find notes that work well together, but also I'll just be playing, and then sometimes you'll feel a full part or a full song just like it's flowing through you. You're like a conduit, and those are some of the most magical feelings where you're just tapping into this like subconscious thing that is like, it's whether it's an emotion, whether it's a narrative in your head. A really fun thing that I like to do is I'll put on a podcast that has nothing to do with music, and I'll just kind of play along with it. And obviously, playing music in the background of words is going to change that context. You could be playing something really dark, and then somebody starts laughing, and that joke will have a darker feel if you're playing, distorted hardcore type stuff. And then if you're gently finger picking over it, things can just, a soundtrack to a spoken word, it'll change everything, right? And just so, yeah, I try to reach that flow state as often as I can and just let things come out. And it's very therapeutic, not just to like write the song, but to play it. All that movement and like the head banging and whipping the guitars around on stage and everything.
Yeah.
A lot of that I perceive in other performers, and I definitely experience in myself as just like part of, it's not just like, trying to look cool. It's like, this is a very visceral feeling that still feels relevant, and like I'm processing it in real time. And it's not always the case that a feeling stays raw and at the surface and that you never get over it and it only gets softer when you play it live, but sometimes that's the case. You know what I mean? And so so much of my experience with it is just trying to channel emotion and have that internal emotional narrative come out as a melodic narrative.
Yeah.
And like putting notes together that guide the listener through your experience, and in an attempt to create a connection point.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was certainly, again, it's like we said in the beginning, some of those melodies, really connected with me and lyrically. I think what you guys do, I'll try not to be too much of a fan here, but I think what you guys do is really, it's a really beautiful thing, and I can't wait for more people over, here in the UK to see it. I have three or four more questions before we finish up, and one of them is around the visual side of the band, like the videos, and the artwork, things like that, because I think again is a really cool element to the band. How much weight or effort do you put into single covers, beautiful, again, photographs, imagery on those, also the video side of things, kind of a great, not to again oversimplify 90s aesthetic, I would say. But what is, how much of that, how much of the visual element, how much weight do you put into it? Some bands, obviously, it is just as important as the sonic stuff, 50-50. But how much weight do you put into that visual side of the band, album covers, single covers, and videos, things like that? Because I think I think that's another cool element of the band personally.
I think we put a significant amount of time and energy into finding an album cover that would work for You Feel It Too. We were back and forth on so many different images and really trying to find something that when you look at it, it felt like the album. And there's this saying that Peter told me one time that like an album is never done, it's just released. Which is true. I mean, like, I feel like I'm never going to feel 100% satisfied or feel 100% the same with like every aspect of the album. But I feel pretty close with this one, and I think what something that has to do with it is like the visuals that we were able to create in collaboration with some talented videographers and photographers and graphic designers um, for this album. We got insanely lucky when it came to the two music videos that we have for this record. And that is because we, for the first one for Machine, we literally was luck of the draw. We won a contest for these local videographers in our city that were giving away like a music video. They're like, hey, we'll produce your music video for you. Just enter this contest and be following our accounts. We're like, okay.
And we didn't
And
even
we
outright
won.
win it. We didn't even outright win it is the funny part. There was someone else who like lived in Texas and like had 2 followers or something. And then on the second drawing is when we won it.
Yeah. Yeah, they wanted like a local band, not someone that would have to fly in. But so that was the first video, and then the second video, there was this director, there is this director named Jeff Ryan, and he emailed us like, "Hey, I'm a videographer, photographer. I'm gonna be in town for a few days doing this commercial photo shoot, but it's going to wrap early, so I have a whole free day. And I found you guys online and I really like your music. Like, are you interested in doing a music video?" And I was like, yeah, sure, but whatever you heard at this point online is already like 2 or 3 years old. So let me send you our new album and see what you think. And so he did a video for Plainview for us.
Yeah.
That is very like ethereal and cool and really transformed like these little dinky spaces in Miami that we took him to into these like very cinematic scenes. And I'm really excited for that to come out. That's going to be released on the 4th with the album.
Yeah.
And so yeah, those visuals we were really lucky. It's really hard to be an indie band with regards to the financials and finding the money to create something that is pleasant to look at, because you could do something DIY on your phone, but there's something to be said for like being able to pay someone who really knows what they're doing and really has a great eye above all.
Yeah.
So Jeff, like, he did this video for us on like a shoestring budget. He just asked us to cover some costs. The directors per machine, they're called the Ionit Studios. They charged us absolutely nothing. Um, but we did throw them like I'm telling you, we threw them like lunch money, like for doing that video for us.
Right.
So yeah, just got really lucky. And with regards to like the album cover, we were really scouring for something that would fit the the sound and match the sound.
Yeah, yeah. Again, watching the videos and seeing, again the artwork that's out there. I think it's really cool. I think that, again, it's like an extra. I'm going to use the sort of word that is a bit of a dirty word for a lot of bands, but the brand, I suppose, the brand of the
Yeah.
band, as it were, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, a couple more then. Another sort of dirty word for, kind of to ask this sort of, ask in this context is the band's mission statement. Now, what I mean by that is, again, based on this conversation,
Uh-huh.
is it to help people with heartbreak? Is it to lift people with euphoric melodies? As it does with me, as a fan and a listener. What would you say if I'm not going to push you. You could just tell me to F off if you don't like the term mission statement and you've never considered it. But what would you say your mission statement is as a band, guys?
Um, well, I mean, just to briefly touch on just the last question,
Mm,
it'll by extension it'll answer this one. Like
mm,
part of the process of making the visual element come to life is, we really insist on. We did get lucky on getting a couple of things for very little money and free, as far as the visuals, but we really insist on trying to find artists that we can collaborate with and pay for their contributions. And for like the album art, for example, there were a couple of pictures that we were really interested in, and then the artist, that like the photographer that we contacted, um it turned out that it was outside of our budget or it was unavailable. And so as much as the band is like very music first, we are always looking to have the visuals kind of extend out from that and be like part of not just like the release, but like the piece of art itself. And so it's important for us to like, lift other people up, especially when they are excited about the band and we're excited about their work. I think that's the mission statement, is generally just we want people to be lifted by the experience of seeing us. It's very inclusive. We're not necessarily a political band lyrically, but you know, the fact that we have queer members in the band like makes it political just by its very existence. And being able to have Carli and Emmy's lyrics be out there, for people to hear and connect to, regardless of who they are, regardless of their background, and whatever box other people want to put them into. Like, it's an open door. Everybody is allowed to enjoy it. We want everybody to be along for the ride. And it's going to be a fun ride. We're going to play softly, we're going to play loudly, we'll slow things down, we'll slow things down, we'll speed things up. And at the end of the day, the music is definitely a therapeutic experience for us. But you know it doesn't really, it's not really music if it doesn't reach someone else's ears. At that point, it's
mm,
just a therapeutic experience, right? But
mm.
that connection point, having that listener at the other end feel something, whether they love it or they hate it, you can't really control that. But there's been a really positive response from day one, I think, because even before I got involved, the band really placed the premium on being inclusive and on being, relatable, regardless of who's in the band. And yeah, I mean, that's as I guess more of an outsider to that, as somebody who started off as a fan of the band, where it was Carli's idea to bring this thing to life. We have people who are showing up, couples with white hair, like wearing our t-shirts and as excited to see us as, high school age fans who sometimes like see us out in public and get really excited, and yeah, it's definitely for everybody, and that's kind of the central point
Yeah.
of why we do it, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really cool again that you have that diversity in your sound, obviously as individuals as well, but then in your crowd too. I think that's a beautiful thing when you can connect with all ages, Peter. So again, yeah, congratulations on being able to do that. I do think it's a sound that carries across generations. Of course, there's 80s influences. I know you've talked in previous interviews about your shoegaze influences from the 80s, particularly in the UK. Of course, 90s alternative. So I do think a lot of people connect with the sound in a range of ways.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Carli, any points you want to add to that?
Uh,
No
I think
pressure.
Peter put it in a great way. Yeah. For this album, and this is in our dumb press release, but like we wanted to make the heavy songs heavier and the softer songs softer. Um, and I think that's really what we're setting out to do, is to be this like band that can be both heavy and soft and abrasive, but also gentle.
Mm,
Um, and that's like what a lot of our, heroes and inspirations have done with their music.
yeah.
We're not like exactly reinventing the wheel or anything, but yeah.
Again, I think there's definitely some great sonic diversity in there, and I can't wait to see the future of the band. And really excited for you feel it too. On that
Thanks.
on that note, obviously, what would you like to say to your UK fans? I know that there are people. I mean, I've spoken to people that listen to you guys over here. And
Oh,
I
wow.
know in Europe as well, people have connected with the band in various ways. So, what would be your message to people in the UK and Europe who listen to the band and want to continue to support you through the release of You Feel It Too and way beyond that?
Well, first of all, even if it's only, five people who like have heard our music over there, it's insanely cool to hear you say that.
It's
And
more than that, by the way. I'm just saying, but carry on.
Wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
like it's genuinely really cool. I mean, we see like the freaking Spotify stats and all that shit. We ship all our own merchandise from our Bandcamp store. Like we see where these packages are going, and it's always mind blowing to see them go out to the UK or to another European country. Um, but yeah, I mean, just the fact that we're this little band from this corner of Florida, which is such a shit show of a state, and it's really not what people think of when they think of like bands from America. Whenever we're talking with like bands from overseas and they ask us where we're from, the first question is always like, "Oh, are you from New York or LA?" And it's like, the United States is like huge, right? We're from Miami. Like the fact that we're just a little band from Miami and you're saying that, people that have been listening to us and talking about us over there is just really insanely cool. And we're hoping next year to cross over and make the journey to play some shows over there. And whether we're just playing in some tiny pub, uh, or something bigger, supporting another band or whatever it may be, we're really excited because it will be my first time um, in the UK and in Europe. So just really excited for the future and going over there playing some shows hopefully next year.
Yeah, that is exciting. Peter, you want to add to that
Mhm.
at all?
Well, I mean, my mom, she's not British, by any means, but she was born in Liverpool. Her and her siblings were born in different parts of the world. And
Yeah.
so her, being from Liverpool and, I grew up on a lot of British media, Lord of the Rings and, you know, uh, Monty Python and Eddie Izzard is a huge,
Yeah.
huge influence on my comedic sensibilities and on my personality. And so yeah, I mean, even in our music, there's tons of influence from you know, European bands from UK bands that have kind of made their way in, you know, Mogwai and Oasis and Portishead. The list goes on. I mean, so the sheer impact that Europe and the UK had on me as a kid growing up, as far as the things that I was drawn to musically at a very, very young age, that's always stuck with me. And and yeah, I've been over across the pond only a couple of times. I've been just to the UK one time, spent some time in London, and that was it. So I'm extremely excited to go back, and very humbled to hear that there is, you know, somebody, anybody, more than five people, you know, listening to what we do. It's just, it's really crazy. And I've been doing this a long time, and it's always exciting to connect with even one person when they're in your backyard. So it's going to be really fun to go over there and introduce ourselves to some people and have a good time together.
Absolutely. We definitely, you know, I'm not trying to speak for the whole of the UK, but yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be very excited to see and hear you guys. As we approach the end, then this is where we test if I've done my job properly, Carli and Peter. Is there anything that you would like to add that I have missed today that you would like to promote?
No, I think this has been one of the really genuinely cooler interviews that we've done this last couple weeks.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I mean, yeah, I want to shout out, not internally. You obviously did a lot of homework on, you know, us specifically, but I want to shout out just the Miami and South Florida and Florida scene in general. There's a lot of great bands that are coming out of there, and just artists in general. You know, Dime is one, Bloom Dream, Phoenix James. You know, whether it's jazz or punk or indie or metal, there's a little bit of something for everyone in Miami, and the whole state of Florida is just constantly producing things that are criminally underrated, in my opinion. And that's like the tradition that we come from, is, you know, being in this state that's a little isolated, that routinely gets ignored. You know, we gotta all do our own thing and support each other. And we have friends in a bunch of different bands that are putting in the same amount of time and energy, if not more, as we are. And you know, their hard work is also paying off, with new records and tours happening. So just eternally grateful to be from where we're from. And, you know, hopefully the South Florida to UK and European connection can continue as we try to have that, you know, cultural exchange that can rely on music instead of on, you know, I don't know, with everything else going on, like politically, it's just, it's nice to see things going across the border that are supportive instead of explosive, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, I think it's great because I remember watching another interview with you guys, and you were shouting out the scene as well. I think that's a beautiful thing, you know, when you connected with so many other bands, and you really do shout your scene out. I think that's it's a great thing to be proud of and to be a part of. So once again, guys, congratulations on all of your success so far, and I'm very, very excited for the new record. I can't wait for other people to hear it. And yeah, thank you all. Well, thank you guys so much for your time as well. Really, really appreciate it today.
Thank you so much, Dom.
Yeah, for real, Dom. Much appreciated. Can't wait to go over there, and maybe we get to hang out, share a pint.
Yeah,
absolutely. It'd be my absolute pleasure.